Brenden Nunes of the Kings Herald, Kings Pulse, Kings Beat. Anything involving the Kings, Brenden Nunes does it. He's joining us here today along with his dog. The chat house is having some fun with Brenden here today. Some of our favorite comments so far as Brenden has changed locations here for his stream. Brendan's mom let him use the living room today. There's another one up here. Dave Garcia says, "Hey, Brenden, how was prom?" Dr. David hit us with Brenden has a fake ID. Hey, it's the Heartbreak Kid. Like, come on, man. Brenden Nunes.
I'm saying it's time to call him Brenden McLovin.
Brenden.
My ID is still vertical at this current point.
Oh, see, he has. In fact, he has an ID. It's a school ID. It's a campus ID. So he can get
a lot
on
of
campus.
Discounts with that thing, Damien. I don't know, man.
Man, I'm
you see how long I use my Cal State Hayward ID to get discounts on the movies. I was almost ready for Social Security still using that thing.
Got to.
Like I gotta get the student discount, sir. It says you're about to turn 40. Yeah, so are you shaming me? Then you create a scene. Like, are you shaming me? Are you saying I'm too old? And then, sir, please calm down here. Just take the. That's how you got to do it.
Yeah, you sound like you've done it a few times.
Yeah, he's been through this. Ian says that Brenden pours his Capri Sun into a coffee mug. And Soren asked if your cap and gown have come in yet. So there's a couple of notes here. Sacktown Tony, Brenden is young enough to be one of TT's kids.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. That's the show closer right there. That's the walk-off. Well done, Sacktown Tony. That's solid work right there. Brenden just wrapped up an episode of the Kings Beat podcast with James Ham. What are you and James rapping about on the latest edition?
It's a dive into DeAaron Fox this season, which was pretty up and down.
Yeah.
And, yeah, went into that. Talked a little bit about the Minnesota thing, which I don't know if you guys already talked about today.
What Minnesota?
Just them,
like the celebration?
just the way that they were celebrating.
Mm.
And
fair or foul? Are you okay with it?
I'm good with it. I thought it was, okay. I mean, I'm going to laugh at it a little bit. Pat Bev standing on the scorer's table and throwing his jersey.
Throwing his jersey. Like, he did do that.
It's funny.
I'm okay with all of that.
I can't. It was a little much. I'm okay with it. Like, they made the playoffs. They missed it 13 years in a row, made it once, and then missed it, the last 3 seasons? Like, it's pretty comparable to the Kings. If that's Golden One Center and the Kings secure the playoffs, are they not going crazy?
Come on, man.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. We going nuts. I'm going nuts. It's going crazy.
We're climbing light poles. Like, it's... The Sawyer's gonna like quadruple capacity. Fire marshal's gonna shut clubs down. Like, it'll be a parade in the streets the night that the Sacramento Kings clinch a playoff spot. Absolutely. This isn't winning a play-in game. This is clinching a play-in spot that it would go absolutely nuts.
Yeah, absolutely.
The tears are like, if DeAaron Fox shed tears after the Kings clinch a play-in spot, I don't know. I might have some questions, but still, I get the reaction.
Yeah, it's definitely a little much, and I think understandable to, like, I'm laughing at a good portion of it, but at the same time, like, I appreciate a moment. I'm definitely somebody that loves, part of why I love sports, you get to witness people have some of the most memorable, best moments of their lives. And there's just so much that those guys went through, like Pat Bev, beginning of the year, says, I'm going to take this team to the playoffs. I've never missed the postseason in my career. Everybody looks at him like he's crazy. And he does it against the team that didn't want to pay him, And Cat, with everything he's been through these last couple years, like, I get why there's a little extra. And can't help but think, man, Golden One Center has got to experience this at some point. Hopefully we're on the way.
Have to. I've said for a while, and I still feel this way. I don't think the team is currently that's put together. I don't think they're that far off. I think we're talking about a player here, a player there, from being where Minnesota is. I'm not talking about Phoenix and a championship contender. I'm talking about Minnesota. Clippers, obviously the Clippers had the injury to Paul George and Kawhi, so that changed their record. But I don't
Cleveland.
think the Kings are that far off. I really don't. I think, a good pickup here and there, good draft pick or using that draft pick, on a trade. They don't need to go get Damian Lillard to get to that level. Just good, somebody that fits. I don't think they're that far away. How do you see these guys, Brendan?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's winning on the margins. Like Minnesota did need Anthony Edwards, that number one pick, but that team won 19 games 2 years ago, and the Kings were 31 wins that year. So I think it does take a little bit of good luck. Like one of your moves just has to work more than anybody actually thought it would. But it is margin stuff, like a Pat Bev coming in and changing the culture. Maybe that's a Davion Mitchell. I think Jaden McDaniels is a really big aspect of that team. Your 5 with Karl Anthony Towns is not a rim protector, so you went and got a 4 that can do it. And maybe he's not a great three-point shooter, but like getting the right complementary pieces. Chris Finch, somebody that we've heard the Kings really wanted. They made a change in the middle of the season for their coach, and went and got somebody off a different coaching staff in the middle of the season. That is ballsy, and it paid off.
Yeah.
So I think it's about making it work on the margins, and that's kind of where Sacramento's at right now. Like you said, I think Phoenix was pointed to a lot, and I was skeptical of that because that's an outlier turnaround, right? But it is the examples like Minnesota, like Cleveland, like Chicago, where it's like, no, you can make that jump if you get some of these marginal moves right. And I think the Kings can do that. And they also need one more top-end talent guy for sure, but you have really bad shooting around Fox and Sabonis. DeAaron just told us in that exit interview, is like, usually good teams are kind of built the same way. You have 2, 3, maybe 4 guys, and then length in shooting. And I don't think the Kings have very much length in shooting, but there's a decent amount in the league, and that's what they got to go and get.
Real quick, Damien. Brendan, I hear this a lot too, and I pushed back on this a little bit a couple weeks ago. When you say they need one more top end talent, like there's a lot of teams out there that are doing it without 3 all-stars, right? You look at New Orleans last night, they got CJ, Brandon Ingram, and Valanciunas, but they got these guys around them that are playing well. You look at the Kings, DeAaron, Sabonis, Harrison Barnes. Like you shouldn't have to go get John Collins to make the playoffs. If you got him, obviously that'd be great. But like I said, look at your Minnesotas. Look at your New Orleans. And these are the teams that I'm talking about. Even look at the Clippers. Like the Clippers got Paul George now, but they're out there doing a Reggie Jackson, Terrence Mann. I don't know if they need high-end talent. They just need somebody that fits, whether that's a shooter, a defender, all this other stuff. They need somebody that fits, preferably at that 4 position, instead of probably Trey Lyles. And he don't have to be an all-star caliber player or even close to it. He just got to fit because they've got high-end talent as it is. Sabonis, Fox, and Harrison Barnes.
Yeah, I think I mean like probably somebody about Harrison's caliber. Like they need right now they have 3 starters. After that, I don't know that anybody else has started caliber on the team. Like I think Dante could be that guy, but he's a 5th starter, right? Like I think that they need another plus starter, which, they have the assets to go do it. I think Rashawn Holmes could still have interesting value if you want to move with your draft pick, if you got that right. So I think it totally can be just getting it right on the margins with the complementary guys rather than going out and getting a top end, as long as that's also with a coach. Because to me, the main thing with a coaching improvement is less of like making the stars better. I think those guys are going to get theirs. To me, it's those complementary players, and talked about this on the Kings Beat with James today, of like those complementary players, can you make them the best versions of themselves? Can you hide their weaknesses and highlight their strengths? Because I don't think we've seen that. In years past, like Buddy Hield's out there guarding Devin Booker and running a pick and roll. And I'm like, what are we doing here? So I think to me, if
that's
you
funny.
are,
That's what Buddy was saying too. What am I doing here?
He definitely was. So I think if you're not adding a top end guy, that's fine. I think it can totally work that way, but that just puts even more pressure on the coaching decision.
You listening to D'Lo and KC on ESPN 1320 KIFM West Sacramento, KRXQ HD2 Sacramento, and Odyssey Station, and driven by Lashers, Elk Grove Dodge. Brenden Nunes of the King's Pulse podcast and the King's Beat podcast joining us now. You mentioned you and Ham did a deep dive into DeAaron Fox. DeAaron mentioned in his media availability a couple of days ago that he recognizes the performance that he had against Portland to start the season, and everything kind of faltered after that. What did you think of his assessment of the season? And do you have any belief that he can be closer to that second half DeAaron Fox that we've seen through the last two seasons at the beginning of next season?
I think so. I mean, I think it's easy to see why DeAaron wasn't talking the way that Tyrese was at the beginning of the year anymore, because DeAaron did that when he first came to Sacramento. I'm going to change everything here, and he said that in his recent presser. If he still wants, that still rings true. But you get beaten down, he's dealt with a lot during his time here, and some of it he could have been better. But I think coming into this season, it's a tough situation. I would assume that he expected Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley to be gone. Who knows where they were at with Luke Walton. So you're going into the year with guys that don't want to be there. And I think that's a tough environment to thrive and want to be the best version of yourself in. So not trying to give him a pass or anything, but I think at least if I try to put myself in his shoes, I could see why I'd be extremely frustrated. And I think that what we saw from him, him and Domantas Sabonis clicked instantly. I thought it would be a little bit of some growing pains. There was not. They worked right away. They played 15 games together. DeAaron averaged 28, almost 7 assists on 50% from the field. That duo works. They make each other better, and they're just going to continue to grow from here. So to me, I don't see why not. I don't think I can say yes because it is a trend at this point. But to me, it feels like it should be sustainable throughout the course of a season. And I thought it was interesting, Logan Murdoch, friend of the show, right, of his piece on DeAaron, pointing out that somebody close to DeAaron said, I thought it was good for him to go to Kentucky because when he's surrounded by other talented guys, that makes him better. Mm-hmm. And we haven't seen that. Domantas Sabonis is the best player that DeAaron has ever played with. He's going into year 6. So I think that I'm optimistic for DeAaron's next season, that he'll be able to do it for a longer amount of time, but definitely still needs to be proven.
Casey, I think the other thing that stood out that Kenny and I always talk about from that Logan Murdoch piece was structure. And that's a word I think he even used in his media availability the other day. Is you talk about talent and all this stuff, but structure. DeAaron is a guy who thrives under structure. And that's sorry, you're not getting that in Sacramento, or at least you haven't as of yet.
Definitely have not. And I think another reason the coaching change is so big. He knows he can look at Domantas Sabonis and be like, I am going to work out with this guy this offseason because this is my partner. This is my duo. And I don't know how often throughout his career, he probably felt this way with Tyrese, I would assume, that he could actually look at somebody and it's I'm going to grow with this guy. It's going to be a long-term thing, so I can put all my effort and energy into building a chemistry with this guy because I know that's going to be there. That is the sense of consistency and structure. Hopefully a coach can come in and do the same thing, because I don't think we can talk about consistency, continuity until it's the right guy. You can't just do it for the sake of continuity. Mm-hmm. But I think that growing with the right coach would be huge. Every single season, he doesn't know what his role is going to be. Maybe that's a little overdramatic because DeAaron's the number one guy. But beginning of this year, I think he's trying to make other people comfortable a little bit, because the best way that this team is going to be good is by the guys around him being the best version of themselves. We know what we're getting with DeAaron. He was kind of deferring to Tyrese a little bit at the beginning of this season and trying to make him comfortable is what it looked like out there. Sometimes DeAaron needs to just go out there and get his own. And if he can trust that those other guys are going to be put in the best spots by a coaching staff rather than him having to kind of do it out there, and know that I'm the leader of this team, he's emerging vocally from that point rather than just leading by example, that we've said it before, but hopefully the guys you put in place right now are actually going to be long-term things. If Dante DiVincenzo resigns, it's going to be, ideally a decent length contract. That's somebody that you can look at with Domas, DeAaron, Davion Mitchell, and Dante DiVincenzo that you can look at it and it's like, okay, this is a group that I rock with and I can go to war with and build with and have that sense of consistency. So hopefully we're going into that, but I got to say, I think I talked myself into the same thing last year before. So
Famous last words.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Most of us did. I shouldn't say we all did. Some people were like, it's not going to happen this year anyway. But
shout out Will Griffith. He said like 34 wins. He was wrong. They were actually worse than Will Griffith predicted, and he predicted them to be pretty bad. But yeah, fell for it.
Brenden, where do you stand on the Kenny Caraway stance of end the streak now at all costs?
Responsibility be damned.
End it this year, or you won't be around to build anything. Monty McNair, DeAaron Fox, and probably Sabonis. End it now.
Yeah, it has to. It has to. I don't think that I'm mortgaging all the future, because to me, if it doesn't work this year, maybe you can actually convince higher ups to let you fully reset and move on from Fox and Sabonis. But I'd rather not have to live with that world.
No, Brenden, you can do that. It's just going to be with somebody else. Monty, pull up that Zillow and you can move on. So if you want your job, you need to figure out how to get this done. We can rebuild with somebody else.
Yeah. And yeah, again, I don't think that's ideal. I think it's got to be all playoffs next year. And DeAaron said in his presser, like it was, he's like, I don't want to say that winning's more important this year than it was before, but like, just kind of hesitating. He's like, you just don't want to lose, like I think it's at a point where you can't point to, oh yeah, but look at X, Y, and Z of like, this is why it's a bright future. Like, no, there's no bright future. It's got to happen right now. Mm-hmm. So I'm with you.
That's Brenden Nunes, the host of the King's Pulse podcast. Does some work with James Ham over at the King's Beat. Does some work on the King's Herald. If it involves the Kings, Brenden does it. Yeah. Great season. Great to have you on the beat all year. You provided great insight. I know for me and Kenny, all of your work all year, man, has been tremendous. And we appreciate you as always for being a part of what we're doing.
Absolutely. And for those watching on the stream, give a round of applause for Brendan's dog as well. I mean, they watched him far more than they watched or listened to anything that we said.
And that's okay. Like, I'm going to be honest. I was too. I mean, the dog is behind Brenden playing with the ball. Like, how can you not love that? Like, dogs are the greatest things in the world. And to be able to talk to Brenden while watching his dog play with what's got to be his favorite toy is just the best.
Stuffed it with a treat and keeping her busy for sure.
Yeah,
mentally stimulate that dog. It is a cattle dog that has way too much energy for this apartment.
That's all right. That's all, my two dogs are very different. If I used to load those types of toys with treats. Smoothie would get them out in 10 seconds. Sprout, the treats are still in there. She couldn't quite figure out how to get those things out. So
hold on. Did you like cut the ball in half and put a treat in it?
No, there's like an opening.
Yeah.
So
it's like flaps.
You drop some tweets in there.
Time, the dog's trying to get the treat out of there.
You got to roll it like in the right direction, and the treat will fall out the bottom.
Just toss it up and hope when it hits the floor it pops out, and
there it is.
Brenden, please take that treat out and give it to the dog.
She'll get it.
Well, that's and we'll wrap up with Brenden so the dog can. What's the dog's name?
Molly.
Brenden Nunes and Molly here on D-Lo and KC. We appreciate you, my friend. Thanks, you as always.
Great job, man.
Thanks for having me on, fellas. I appreciate it.